We got some breaking hot news coming here on the MeidasTouch network. Chief Judge of the District of Columbia, Judge Boesberg, in a new scathing order, has effectively called out Donald Trump and the Department of Justice for bringing a fake criminal investigation against the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jay Powell, for alleged criminal conduct related to a renovation of a couple of Federal Reserve buildings. He's called it for what it is. It's oppressive. That the mountain of evidence, his words, exists to show that this was all because Donald Trump wants Jay Powell, the Federal Reserve chairperson, to resign or to cut interest rates or both. And when he wouldn't do either, Donald Trump sicked the Department of Justice on him, who opened up a criminal investigation in order to destabilize Jay Powell. Thank God for federal district judges that have the courage, the convictions, and the brass ones like Judge Boesberg to fight back. I'm Michael Popok. You're on the MeidasTouch network. We're independent. We're bringing you the commentary that you need about cases that you need to know about. Let's start at the back of a 26-page order. Here's what Judge Boesberg, who you may remember, if not, I'll tell you firsthand, is the same judge that was in the process of finding the Trump administration and the Department of Justice and Kristi Noem in criminal contempt for having violated his orders back in April and March of last year to send human beings without due process in the middle of the night to El Salvador's torture prisons. Same judge. Let's turn to his conclusion, and then I'll read to you from some of the most powerful moments in his order. A mountain of evidence, Judge Boesberg says, suggests that the government served the subpoenas to get information about the renovation of the two buildings that are 100 years old on the board of the Federal Reserve to pressure its chair into voting for lower interest rates or resigning. We have a word for that in the business, everybody. It's called extortion. The judge continues, on the other side of the scale, the government has produced essentially zero evidence to suspect Chair Powell of a crime. Indeed, its justifications are so thin and unsubstantiated that the court can only conclude that they are pretextual. He therefore is going to quash the subpoenas. It gets worse for the government, not better. He starts off his memorandum opinion, which I will post on Legal AF Substack, with all the attacks by Donald Trump on Chairman Powell. From page 1, first sentence. Jerome Too Late Powell has done it again. He's too late and actually too angry, too stupid, and too political to have the job of a Fed chair. He's costing our country trillions of dollars. Too Late is a total loser, and the country's paying a price. Truth Social posting July 31st, 2025. That's how the judge leads off first sentence of his order. So he is truly one of the dumbest and most destructive people in government, Donald Trump continued. Yet the president, according to the judge, has been unable to push rates lower through social media posts. So he has thus hinted at other options. I want him out. I want to force something. The judge says, perhaps on page 2, it comes as no surprise then that the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office has recently opened a criminal investigation into Powell. This is about two buildings. They're both 100 years old and haven't been renovated in 100 years. That comprise a 3-building complex of the Federal Reserve in Washington, filled with asbestos, with 100-year-old heating and cooling systems, with elevators that haven't been worked on. Is there any doubt after COVID, after the impact of tariffs, that the building's budget has gone up? That's a crime? So the judge says, my focus here is to determine whether the subpoenas were issued for a proper purpose. The court finds that they did not issue the subpoenas for a proper purpose. There is abundant evidence that the subpoena's dominant, if not sole purpose, is to harass and pressure Powell to either yield to the president or to resign and make way for a Fed chair who will. In fact, the judge said, I effectively smoked out that there's no evidence because I gave the government the opportunity to show me, just the judge, in camera, any evidence they have to suggest that there's a fraud, not just the specter of fraud, not just the possibility of fraud. You're talking about a human being's reputation. What do you got? Put your goods on the table. And the judge said they came up with Nothing, despite being given that opportunity. Let me show you a clip of Donald Trump going after Jay Powell, which is exactly, and has been cited by the judge, exactly what the judge is talking about. And the judge says, to the extent that I'm focused on what the president says and does instead of the Department of Justice, they are effectively one and the same. I have eyes. I see the reality. Play the clip of Donald Trump bashing Jay Powell.
As you know, the inflation numbers just came out, and we have very low inflation. So that would give Too-Late Powell the chance to give us a nice, beautiful, big rate cut, which would be great for the country. But rates are falling also, and growth is going up. We have tremendous growth numbers, so growth is going up. And I can only say that the country's doing well. He's billions of dollars over budget, so he either is incompetent or he's crooked. I don't know what he is, but certainly he doesn't do a very good job.
Now, as we know, Chairman Powell, completely out of character and out of form. I mean, he is a very modest, smart but modest person. When that criminal investigation got announced, he took to the airwaves, much like former FBI Director James Comey, to defend himself, the honor, and he called it out himself. He said, this is nothing more than a president upset with policy, making false claims of corruption or crimes. Play the Jay Powell clip.
On Friday, the Department of Justice served the Federal Reserve with grand jury subpoenas, threatening a criminal indictment related to my testimony before the Senate Banking Committee last June. That testimony concerned, in part, a multi-year project to renovate historic Federal Reserve office buildings. But this unprecedented action should be seen in the broader context of the administration's threats and ongoing pressure. The threat of criminal charges is a consequence of the Federal Reserve setting interest rates based on our best assessment of what will serve the public, rather than following the preferences of the president. This is about whether the Fed will be able to continue to set interest rates based on evidence and economic conditions, or whether instead monetary policy will be directed by political pressure or intimidation. Public service sometimes requires standing firm in the face of threats. I will continue to do the job the Senate confirmed me to do, with integrity and a commitment to serving the American people.
I'm Michael Popok, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of MeidasTouch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok Firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok Firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way. Now, here's how the judge describes it on page 5. Trump has specifically aimed his anger at Chair Powell. For years, he's berated Powell, threatened him, ordered him to lower rates, or done all three at once. We've seen that, and we see what happens to adversaries. Now, here's where the judge ties together Attorney General Letitia James of New York, former FBI Director James Comey, and Adam Schiff, all as political critics, although I wouldn't characterize Jerome Powell as a political critic of Donald Trump. He won't let the president control interest rates because that's why we have an independent Federal Reserve. Here's what the judge says in the bottom of 5 over to 6. Being perceived as the president's adversary has become risky in recent years. In his second term, Trump has urged the Department of Justice to prosecute such people, and the department's prosecutors have listened. For instance, the president exhorted the Attorney General to prosecute James Comey, Adam Schiff, and Letitia James. And then he cites to each one of those. Consistent with this pattern, the DOJ has now set its sights on Powell. Now, Donald Trump is also probably annoyed with Jay Powell because he showed him up, because he's smarter than Donald Trump. When Donald Trump tried to embarrass Jay Powell, I guess, into resigning, marching down to the construction site with a hard hat on, no less, with Senator Tim Scott by his side, handing at the last minute, trying to sandbag Jay Powell with some sort of sheet that showed there was a couple of $1 billion cost overrun, and watch Jay Powell, chairman of the Federal Reserve, who was appointed by Donald Trump, school in real time Donald Trump. Play that clip.
So we're taking a look, and it looks like it's about 3.1 billion. It went up a little bit, or a lot. So the 2.7 is now 3.1.
I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, it just came out.
Yeah, I haven't heard that from anybody at the Fed.
Yeah, it just came out.
Our notes had it about 3.1 as well.
3.1,
3.2.
This came from us?
Yes. I don't know who does that.
You're including the Martin renovation. You just added
our entire capital.
Yeah, you just added in a third building is what that is. That's a third building.
Well, no, but it's a building that's being built.
No, it was built 5 years ago. We finished Martin 5 years ago.
It's part of the overall work.
And then, of course, right around the holidays, the U.S. Attorney's Office serves subpoenas on the board. Now, Tom Tillis, soon to be outgoing senator from North Carolina, Republican, has said he will not allow a vote to come up on the next replacement for the Federal Reserve coming out of Donald Trump until this investigation is over. So he's going to block, at least for now, he's going to block any new appointment to the Federal Reserve by Donald Trump. This might help him. Judge Boesberg might have heard him and said, let me give you an opportunity. I'm going to end the criminal investigation right now. They should have withdrawn these subpoenas anyway. Here's what the judge goes on to say on page 15 about these subpoenas. It says the board, the Federal Reserve, contends that the government issued these subpoenas for the improper purpose of harassing and pressuring Powell to push the Fed to lower interest rates or to resign and make way for a more pliant chair. There can be little debate that such purpose would be improper. As just discussed, he then says that this is effectively, concludes that it is effectively an improper purpose. What the court must determine on page 16 is whether the board is correct in its inference. In other words, what is these subpoenas' dominant purpose? A mountain of evidence suggests that the dominant purpose is to harass Powell, to pressure him to lower rates. Period. Improper purpose. He says on page 18, apparently running out of patience, the White House recently launched a campaign to investigate Powell using William Pulte, the director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency, who posted a letter to X saying that Congress should investigate Jay Powell over his political bias and potential crimes. And then following suit, the U.S. Attorney's Office followed suit and opened a grand jury investigation. And what the judge also reminds everybody on page 20 is that the board, the Federal Reserve, has independent inspectors, inspector generals, who have full access to all the contracts, all the schedules, all the expenditures, all the monthly reports about the construction program. And the inspectors general, Donald Trump's inspectors general, haven't said a darn thing. Certainly no crime. So he says on page 21 that the government had been given the opportunity to prove to the judge that there's crimes, show other evidence. And so he gave the court, he gave the attorneys an opportunity. He said to submit ex parte evidence. Respecting this prerogative, the judge says, the court at the hearing invited the government to submit any additional justifications for the subpoena to him directly, ex parte. He says the government at the hearing declined to offer any other evidence, nor has it supplied any written submissions. The court is thus left with no credible reason to think that the government is investigating suspicious facts as opposed to targeting a disfavored official. Subpoenas quashed. criminal investigation should be over. And he's also going out of his way to make sure that the public knows about this by unsealing his order and all the documents underneath it. This is what a competent, trusted, constitutionally aligned federal judge does to protect democracy. I'll cover it all for you right here, as I've always done on MeidasTouch. And of course, over on Legal AF. Come over to Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us. We're going to hit 1.1 million subscribers this weekend with your help. Come over and become a free subscriber. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.